Ben is the founding director of Urban Circus, and he's here to talk today about the sort of work he's doing in communicating the urban spaces to create those visual pictures of the future. As Jane Henley said, quoting, quoting Steve Jobs, people don't know what they want until you show them. Well, Ben's really good at showing us what the future might look like. So I'll hand over to Ben. He's going to be assisted today by Adrian Salmon, and Adrian is from the Department of Planning and Community Development from Victoria, and he's going to show how some of Ben's work is being used by the state government in Victoria to implement some of his ideas. So starting with you, Ben, thank you very much.
That's very good. Thank you. I'm going to talk a bit about technology. I'm going to talk about tools and the tools inside technology. And the great thing is I can't get too far off track today because I'm going to play you an 18-minute video while I'm talking, and I'm roughly timed up with it. So I'm going to be like, just be able to flow with that. I can see my screen down here. So hi there. If you could play that. And what I really want to talk about is you guys as planners, and I'm a planner, that's what I did my PhD in. I don't do a lot of planning these days, but I want to really help you guys get to the front. And I'm basically just going to play some stuff that's going on, and Adrian, this is actually in his area, he's going to talk at the end about how it's helping, these tools are helping. Now there's been a lot of 3D stuff going on, there's lots of good stuff, there's stuff out there. This is 3D, this is actually a sort of a tool that's 3D, so it's not like a rendered video, which is like a final product. And I'm really trying to talk about how this technology, exactly what we've been hearing about from Bob and others, of the next generation in technology is really driving what we're doing. We're really about trying to improve efficiency, okay? And we're about improving the outcomes and effectiveness. The effectiveness of you guys who are in the built environment who need to get to the negotiating table. I find the negotiating table is the place to be effective, yeah? You want to be there when people are having discussions. So my view, I'm going to put forward that planners, and the reason I went to be a planner is because you're both visionaries, setting up the skeletal framework of the future, and you're also the facilitators and the mediators and the arbitrators between all the elements, right? And there's the physical, there's the functional, there's the interpersonal, and the stakeholder roles. You guys and me have the opportunity to sit there in that space, in the space between the spaces. Yeah, we've got engineers, we've got architects, they've all got their very specialist technical areas that they do, but then there's how these things join up. It's how the vertical meets the horizontal, for example. It's how a road hits a terrain. It's how a train or a train station hits the tram station or the bus station or the street. Like that space there is where the magic can happen. And it's a nice space for us to be able to grab and play with and run with and have a big influence and effect. Now planners, in the nice way, have typically the tools of the zone and the code and the regulation, right? We need tools, and the reason I've gone out now and spent 10 years and bet the family farm is I needed a tool that allowed me to get down to the human scale, as you saw there. So this is just a video. You can actually see our toolbar around the edge of some of the work we've done in Melbourne. This was actually paid for, these particular bits, by the Melbourne Metro, and we're working between the Metro, the planning agency, the state planning agency, big road projects, and they're all using the same tool to talk to each other, and it is having a big transformative effect. So this tool we need it to be integrated, we need it to be multidisciplinary, right? We need the engineers and the architects and the urban designers and the landscape architects talking to each other. It needs to be agile, and it needs to be live. Okay, and the magic number here is on the bottom left, it says 60 FPS. So that's twice the rate that your TV runs at. So it's frames per second. So it sits there and it can drive at the speed of conversation. You guys can have a conversation, and I'm going to reveal some tools today in this space. It needs to be intelligent and it needs to be measurable. Okay, so look, the space that I'm a public space advocate, right? That's what I really love. And the thing that affects public space more than anything is transport. The transport guys, they got all the money, they got the big influence, they do the big projects. So I need to get to the table with the transport guys. So we've built tools here, and here we are dealing around Flinders Street Station. It just happens to be an intersection that we had. that get you in and experience and influence that space live and in real time. And this one trick of I'm clicking on a car here and I'm now inside some sort of accurate engineering space, and I can click on the rear view mirror, which is important from a sort of a driver tester point of view, and particularly as the user experience from the steering wheel, and it would be great if it was push bikes. We do push bikes as well, you'll see in a minute, is really transforming projects just like this. This is a $10 billion road project on the edge of Melbourne. And what we've been able to do is bring together all these elements, whether you believe in the project or not. It's about how it interfaces with the edges, yeah? It's how it integrates with the community. Can it benefit? Can it actually drive quality like CityLink and things like that with the fantastic landmarks? They do roads very well. Sometimes people like to take it to this pre-rendered space. So this is WestConnex, and we're sort of doing Disney, Pixar kind of tricks here and visual effects and tunnels underground and stuff like that, sort of into the promotional land. We don't do too much in the promotional kind of space, but here we are trying to sell the idea and tell the story really of, this tunnel sort of down there, so don't worry. And here's the urban renewal. But the space that we really made a big effect there was actually in demonstrating some of the earlier options and perhaps how they weren't, the best thing for the actual community. A lot of work we do is quite humble, it's quite underwhelming, it's quite sort of minimalist. So here's a bike path, actually next to the Foxground to Berry bypass, which is down south in New South Wales. Stage 1, 400 submissions and a bit of an agitated kind of community and a bit of negative media, and things didn't quite work out. Stage 2, using the interactive media, of which this is just a video out of it, all built in virtual space. We also picked up a whole lot of traffic engineering problems, but really it was really around, hey, we've got this really nice escarpment here. We want to see this escarpment, which you can see coming around the left. We haven't really resolved all the design yet. That's okay. We can go in and we can be in your front yard and we can have that conversation. They got 4 submissions. And those submissions were intelligent, informed, useful submissions as compared to sort of people reading engineering plans and getting it off track. So that's number 1, being able to keep up with the conversation and build that stuff. Number 2 is optioneering. So we've done this for about $50 billion worth of infrastructure now, simply being able to go anywhere in space and flick between options. Here it is before, here it is after, and that grade separation. Here it is bridge 1, bridge 2, bridge 3. Here it is, you live here and you're about to have this thing come closer to your house. How do we have that conversation to improve that design outcome? So the interface there around the design aspect and bring, the community, the stakeholders. Here's another one in Melbourne for regional rail link. And with the realness and the site rawness, it's honest, it's measurable. If you ever doubt it, you can go in and check out your relative levels and you can measure things. And that really allows the conversation to propel forward inside this transport space. This is from South Australia. This is the Superway, which our claim to fame here was to be able to get this concept, which has sat for 2 or 3 years in engineering land and spending millions and millions of dollars, build up the concept, and people were really worried about 11-metre structure over their properties, and fair enough. And we could get that $800 million funded from the Infrastructure Australia and then allow the conversation to occur and come up with the best solution possible. But that's still not enough for me, okay? And working with people like Adrian, and Adrian in particular, into our next stage, we want to be faster and we want to be further at the front of the conversation, okay? So here we are taking engineering drawings and architectural drawings and putting them in place. Now what we want to do here is we've got to have this base model. So here's Melbourne, sort of patched together from a few places, and we want to be able to have a conversation about a podium and tower in this particular case that allows us, on the left of the screen, it's got the floor area, it's got the floor-to-floor heights, it's got setback, and you can literally sit there and have that conversation, and I'm going to do one here in 15 seconds, but let's say 5 minutes or half an hour, an hour, really come up with this conversation and analyse what you can do here or you should do and its impacts on the space around you. So this perhaps could have been months and months and months of conversation, and you're getting all these pretty architectural drawings, and now you're literally sitting there and saying, well, look, do we just basically like this form and does it work? Same with walls. We do that in sort of constrained environments around railway lines and things. into a more complex building form now. I mean, I went into planning to be able to sculpt space at this kind of level, big boxes, shapes, but then get down there to the human scale and be the woman or the child or the man in the street experiencing this kind of space. So this is Fed Square East. This is not a proposal, by the way. I'm just absolutely messing around there at Fed Square East, so don't get the wrong idea. Confidentiality, of course, is all very important in this space. So now we wanted to influence the engineers, right? Okay, this is all very good. Planners are great people. Engineers are great people too. But we want to get into that space where, these alignments have these massive effects on our urban form, don't they? Like a road alignment. We don't do like your railway line there we saw in Tokyo, sadly, where, we tend to grade separate everything and have big safety zones and big fences around things. So we've gone in and actually analysed the national standards in road design, which is called Austroads, and said, well, how do we allow people to make a road and test its compliance for vertical curve, horizontal curve, gradients, super elevation, there's a whole range of factors in there, sort of rubber band simple, like we're talking about the technology of the future, super easy. This is exactly what we're doing here. Red basically means bad, as per usual. Red is a non-compliant space. And we're putting this tool inside the conversation that is happening between stakeholders right up front. Okay, so here we've got, place A, which we've got the buildings more or less there and the aerial photography, and then we're going in and smashing that stuff in live in a meeting. So that would have been years of conversation and millions of dollars. Now I'm messing around here. I'm also building a railway line through somewhere in Melbourne, which will remain unnamed, but it is really just to prove that, again, we can get a light rail concept up and happening in that matter of seconds and that matter of minutes. Same here, same idea, using these off-road standards actually into paths, so you can select different sections, push bikes, pedestrians, all that kind of stuff. Bring that conversation to the front, and of course it's circular, as all design is. It goes back to everything has to be verified by the technical experts, of course, but getting you down there in that push bike space, for example here, and they are commuter type push bikes, sorry there Bob, in their Lycra, but it gets you the idea of what is this place actually like as a human being there on the fly. And you'll see here, I'll select this road and it will tell me a few things that are wrong with it. To get things happening there, which in this particular case I've got the horizontal radius error at the design speed. So if those are in the engineering space, design speed tends to drive the functionality. Okay, so a lot of our clients are getting it, and you'll see Adrian presenting that up. And then in the transport space is mainly where we work. So we're able to offer, and now people, once we go through this process once or twice with clients, they're like, wow, this is really changing the conversation here. This is really mixing up the situation. So we're now looking at, so you guys probably know the charrette and the inquiry by design process and stuff like that. It's good, but it can be kind of expensive, and you come out with all these 2D drawings. So again, we're literally going into a situation where we've got, bridge A. Can we sit down before we do the technical expert stuff and actually build out a concept that we're kind of happy with? Maybe it's got sensitivities around landscape and townscape and heritage and things like that, and have that conversation like this before we, all go down and worry about nuts and bolts and Rio and enforcement and structural engineering and all that kind of stuff. Both things need to interplay, but this is the transformative effect that's happening now on more and more and more projects by making this technology, super easy, I guess. Collaboration is really the key to this, and it's shared thinking, being able to have that shared thinking process. I'm sort of a bit shocked myself. I'm now dealing with very large engineering houses who they love it. They're like, wow, this is fantastic. We can literally sit there and build this stuff on the fly. And they used to think, oh, we're going to do 3 options. Oh, it's going to be amazing. 3 options. We're going to do this. A big one. We'll do 200 options in a week now. We just plough through it and play and move things around in that space. But there's still a problem. And this is the problem, right? Data is expensive, man. You've got to buy this stuff. And I tell you, planners don't have a lot of money. But getting the road engineers to this splines here, these cost $10 million to make these splines. And then they threw them away. They weren't good. They got rid of them. That is the kind of problem we're dealing with here. So we've spent the last year working out how do we get this stuff into people more. So rather than the $1 million setup, how can we have tens of thousands of dollars of getting accurate, credible data? For example, we built the Sydney Harbour Bridge. You can all see it from here. As an asset management tool, it sits now with the road engineers, and they use it directly for testing really quite detailed stuff, like they put in these new gantries, and there was lots of road safety auditing and lots of conversations. You can imagine everyone's kind of interested in what's happening at the Southern Toll Plaza, and here it's fairly important, and trying to get those things right. And I'm trying to influence them to say, hey, this is how we can do it. So here's a public service announcement video that came out of that same sort of process. Where am I up to? About here. All right. So what we've done now is we've gone and found this new technology. It's now running through Google Earth and Apple Maps, and it's called photogrammetry. Well, photogrammetry is kind of old, but there's this new aerial photogrammetry. And the blobby sort of apocalyptic post-Terminator 2 type world you see here, I've got the hand-modelled version of Flinders Street Station, which is nice and clean and costs a bit of money to build. And I've got this approximate version, which is actually automatically generated from a helicopter flying above and taking 10,000 images on high-res photography, but it's just photographs. And we all know photos are kind of cheap, right? And then it runs through an algorithm which is built in France. And what we now have is we have the whole of Melbourne in this particular case. We've got lots of other places. We've actually got Curtin University here. You'll be happy to know. I'm going to show you that in a second. This would have been $2, $3, $4 million to build this city to 300 or 400 mils. Down to 20 mils if you get fancy. It can now be done for $50,000, $60,000 automatically in a month, right? But that's all very good, but then you've got to run it. And you guys have probably used 3D technology before. It's kind of clunky, it's kind of slow, it's kind of chunky. You sort of don't really want to take it to the boardroom or sit with the minister or the councillors. And what the geeks, the online communities, you'll never be able to drive a car in this space. This is 35 gigs of data and about 300 million polygons here. And what we've done is invested in, okay, how do we make this stuff run fast? Okay, so I've got it running at what's locked on at 30 frames a second here, and I'm now driving through an automatically generated 50 mil accurate city, okay, and I can have that to you in probably 4 weeks, any city, anywhere in the world, running there in real time, and you can do this kind of stuff, catching trains. This is raw as well, so it's all very blobby, this area, and the technology is getting better and better all the time. And here's Curtin University, for example, as another area. Now, what I love about this is I get every single tree, every single building, every single line marking, every single piece of curb and channel automatically created, and then I can put you as the client inside that space, and then you can start playing. Like, we don't act as the designer, we act as the mediator and the facilitator between all these different experts to come up with the right result. Now, we're all human. We know good when we see it, and we know bad when we see it. Even engineers are human, right? They see it, and they know, and they're like, oh, geez, that was, maybe not. Let's tweak it, which is great. It's exactly the result you want out of these situations. So where we're going to next, this stuff runs across your network. So I don't want to get too technical on you, but you can actually sit it inside the IT department. It's always a tough conversation with the IT guys, and push it out through the entire organisation and be actually having some sort of fairly average computer there. We're going to just go into some montage they put in there for me, but it's happening across lots and lots of projects now, and we're trying to find this opportunity to get the data into your hands a lot cheaper, a lot simpler, that you can actually starting to be playing with this space in this time. So I'm now going to introduce Adrian Salmon. I've been working with Adrian for a few years, and he has been doing this kind of stuff in the development assessment space at the state government level in Melbourne, and done several hundred buildings in this way. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ben. I don't even know where I stumbled across Ben, but we had a situation of where we were having developers which would keep on asking for more and more on very small sites. And we were trying to play with setbacks, we were trying to play with a lot of things. And we have a minister in Victoria, Matthew Guy, which when he was elected in 2010 came with a very clear agenda of development and economic development through construction, and especially in the CBD. I look after quite luckily, a core area of the CBD, anything above 25,000 square metres in floor area, comes to the state government for assessment. And we were struggling with getting time. There was, as always in government, there seemed to be less staff, and I've had that experience of, I actually started a team with 14. I now work with a team of 5, and I have 3 students. And we are still pushing more work through that. So Ben has actually delivered for me efficiencies which have been amazing and have also meant that we can take that, is it too high, is it too close, is it too low, is it too wide, too narrow, and be actually able to work with it very, very quickly. In some instances, within, say, 5 minutes, you can tell somebody rather it is way too high or you are overshadowing a particular area. If we could just start the video, please. This is a video which has been put together. It's video number 2, sorry, which probably will pop up at the end. Yeah, that's still video 1. What we did was, when we had people which we were trying to basically force them to make different decisions about their developments, because so much works on the basis of how much economic yield you're going to get out of it, and we also have those wonderful single bedroom apartments. This was a development when we had to actually sell it, because we had to pay Ben for some of the work that he did, and we actually had a new secretary appointed, Andrew Tongue, and he was a man with great vision, and we gave him Scott's Church, and that's what he approved, and we went through and assessed it by going through different kind of areas of the development and showing different boundaries. Here we're showing what actually happens in the CBD if we turn on all of the development which has been approved. Now, the Minister for Planning has approved about $12 billion worth of development since November 2010 in Melbourne, and around about 50 to 60% of that is actually under construction, which is the first time we've really been able to track that. So these are some of the big buildings. You can see Australia 108, which will be one of the taller buildings. Then we went down and we started 240 hectares of Fisherman's Bend, which is located in kind of an industrial, quite viable area south of Melbourne, or to the southwest of Melbourne. And we actually worked out the yields in that and actually built it up to see how much you could actually achieve. We then moved into working very closely with Southbank, and Southbank's quite often criticised as being a bit soulless. So we worked through with what you could do in yields and densities. And we then actually started putting projects which we wanted to approve into the model. This is a kind of way you can show people what the different height controls would be if you actually blocked it all in and everything happened. Now, we know that it doesn't happen, but this can be quite worrying for people, because you actually see what the city's going to be like in maybe 40, 50 or 100 years. One project which we put through was a very large tower for a developer in Queensbridge Street called Queensbridge Tower. Bates Smart was the architects, and this video which you're watching was actually included on Channel 9 and I think Channel 10 News. Actually came straight out of Ben's program, out of the Urban Circus. So we was actually able to use it in very different ways of explaining things to people. This was an interesting challenge. It was a new police station to be built in the CBD of Melbourne. It's up by Docklands, butts onto a railway line, and everything around it's very low. And we also have directly opposite the Remand Centre, which people in remand actually do have quite a number of rights. So we had to actually build a police station, which is actually an operational police station, and then has all of the people in the building, which are police backup people, and work it and actually delivered with it. And that's being constructed at the moment. This was the Fisherman's Bend vision. And initially we started doing just little dots, and it was an idea. And then we actually started putting in the building so that people could get it and get an idea about what it was going to be. I think we might have been a bit problematic in that, because the actual response which one of the councils gave us was 4 and 8 stories was suitable. So we're struggling with that at the moment, and it's now with the Metropolitan Planning Authority. This is a shrine of remembrance. It's only one of 2 in the world, and very important. It's 100 years old this year. And we were addressing both that control and the Southbank controls to see what it would do. So with Ben's program, we actually were able to block up what the yields would be, and then one of the other consultants actually pulled it all together and is introducing, probably within the next about 3 to 4 weeks, new controls along the shrine. So it's a very interesting tool which we've suddenly grabbed from Ben to actually then save a lot of time, which was extremely important for us. Because if we didn't do that, I would still be probably today about 300 or 400% behind where I would have been, and especially with the reduction in resources and things like that. So it's been a fantastic outcome for everybody. The Minister for Planning in Melbourne loves it, the Minister for Transport loves it, and you have seen some of Ben's work in both, built form stuff as well as all the infrastructure type of area. So thank you very much.
Adrian. So thank you. That's about it from us. I haven't heard the glass go ding, 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 but we probably do have some time for some conversations. I guess I just want to drive home, what we're really trying to get to the profession, all professions in the built environment, are the tools and the capabilities to be able to have the conversations earlier and earlier around the situations. Now, Adrian and the department, I thought it was DTPLI now, it's been rebranded. Every week's being rebranded. We did a talk at the 6th International Urban Design Conference, and they wrote a paper, Tanya Krasafi wrote a paper. I've got about 6 copies of that paper here. Apparently around 200 development assessments have now gone through this process of using this virtual model, having those conversations, to the Minister with all the stakeholders. And I guess by being able to be on the front foot, which is what I think you guys want, to be able to influence your councillors or your clients or your stakeholders or your ministers or whoever it is that you need to influence, you need this tool before you need the tool, if you know what I mean. You need it there today, and that's why we've invested so much in trying to grab this data. When we all sit there and we can play with Google Earth and Apple Maps, and then it's all this 3D stuff, it's so cool, and then I'm like, hey, how come when I go to a new area and people are suddenly planning that, we don't have that instantly right there that we can just get on and look at the future and play with the future. Because, we care about what's there now, but what we really care about is what we're doing, because we're planners, yeah? We're about the future. And I guess that's the message I want to get out to you, is that you need to do this stuff now so that when something comes in, bam, you're there. And that also affects inward investment, if you're trying to attract investment, which we work a bit with, as well as trying to manage and control the built environment. So thank you very much all for your time. It was really a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.